Welcome back to another episode of 40 Facts About the 40K Universe. I am your host, Gershwin, and you are watching One Mind Syndicate. Today we continue talking about Imperial Guard regiments as we get into the Vostroyan Firstborn. Very surprised that we haven't done this regiment yet. If you guys are new to the channel, subscribe. We post Warhammer 40K content every single day. And if you have any suggestions, comment down below. But with that said, let's get into 40 facts on the Vostroyan Firstborn. The Vostroyan Firstborn is the name given to the militarum regimentum of the Astra Militarum that originates from the industrial hive-world of Vostrea, located near the halo stars in the segmentum obscurus. The Vostroyan regiments have served the Emperor for countless centuries, though in truth they fight to absolve themselves of a terrible shame incurred by their ancestors over 10 millennia ago. During the dark days of the Horus Heresy, Vostrea failed in its duty to the Emperor of mankind. With both the industrial capacity of Vostrea and its unusual tradition of reinforcement for existing regiments, the Vostrayans are particularly well equipped, clad in durable plasteel-alloyed carapace armor plates, and armed with finely wrought lasgun rifles. These are both passed down through the generations, giving the Firstborn a Baroque look, further embellished by their traditional use of red dye and brass metal work in their uniforms and war gear. It is traditional for Firstborn regimental officers to bear lasguns with integrated axe blades or bayonets. Vostroyan regimental standard bearers bear ancient tribal sabers and daggers along with ritual scars on their upper torso. With stoic resolve, the Vostroyans steadfastly sacrifice their lives to the service of the Emperor, either in the manufactori or on the battlefield. The weaponry Vostroyan workers produce is always of the finest quality, for the Firstborn Imperial Guardsmen who will make use of it are their sons, brothers, and fathers, and their only hope for redemption in the Emperor's eyes. As such, hand-carved wooden stocks are expertly inlaid with precious metals, and precision-tooled barrels replaced the utilitarian weaponry used by the Imperial Guard regiments. Every item of Vostrayan war gear is a work of art and carries the hope of a world in its construction. Vostroya has always been an important industrial center for the human-settled galaxy, providing vital arms and munitions to the armed forces of the Imperium of Man. Vostrea's great shame has its roots in an age-long past, when the Emperor of Mankind strode amongst the stars, and his empire was sundered by the Horus Heresy. As the legions of the traitor Warmaster, Horus, carved a bloody trail to Terra, a petition from the Emperor requested that Vostrea raise regiments of soldiers for the Imperial Army to stand in Horus's path. Every worker that toiled in the great smelteries of the planet was already engaged in the immense war effort, and the world's ruling tetrarchs determined that such a sacrifice in manpower would render the production quotas unattainable. They reasoned that the people of Vostroya were better expended making guns than firing them. Reluctantly, the tetrarchs refused the request. Their actions might have gone unremarked, for in the violence of that terrible war, many records were destroyed. Unfortunately for the people of Vostroya, such anonymity would be denied to them. When the heresy ended, the exactor tributi advocates of the administratum began to tally up the cost. Vostroya's refusal to raise arms came to light. The tetrarchs were called to account, a task that the Primarch of the Ultramarines, Guilliman, oversaw personally. Faced with the ire of the Ultramarine Legion's Primarch, the people of Vostroya entrusted the tetrarchs to negotiate a settlement that would allow them to make amends for their perceived disloyalty. Guilliman warned that Vostrea's penance might never end, but even when he stated the grievous terms of Vostrea's reprieve, the tetrarchs willingly accepted their chance for redemption in the Emperor's eyes. The proposal that Guilliman and the tetrarchs agreed to was simple, but has shaped Vostroyan society ever since. To repay their debt to the Emperor, the Vostroyans have for the last 10,000 years given up the firstborn son of every family for service in the Imperial Guard. There is no exception in this penance, and even the greatest noble families must comply. Thus the regiments of the Vostroyan Firstborn were raised. Unlike other Imperial Guard regiments that are raised en masse by a single Imperial world, the already extant regiments of the Firstborn are regularly furnished with steady influx of new recruits from their homeworld. To the Vostroyans, it is a matter of pride that the regiments of the Firstborn have existed unbroken since their first creation in the 31st millennium. Vostroya continues to labor unceasingly to meet the production quotas of their Adeptus Mechanicus masters, but the repayment of this debt to the Emperor comes first. Attached to each of the thousands of manufactori that blot the planet's surface is a sacred workshop where the weapons and war gear of Vostroyan Firstborn are produced. Every laborer on Vostroya is expected to give 1 hour in every 10 to the upkeep of the Firstborn regiments. With stoic resolve, the Vostroyans steadfast sacrifice their time. The weaponry they produce is of the finest quality, for the Firstborn are their sons and brothers and their only hope for redemption. Thanks to the inhospitable climate of Vostroya, their regiments are trained in the most adverse of conditions. Within the skeletal remains of collapsed manufactori, the Firstborn learn the skills of war. Vostroyan's governing committee, the Tetrarchy, is composed of Adeptus Mechanicus officials, as well as Imperial commanders, and as a result, Vostroyan uniforms tend to incorporate red, the color of Mars, and the cyber augmentations among the ranks is commonplace. The weapons they carry to war and mount on their vehicles are not mass-produced, but exquisitely handcrafted by military artisans. Vostroyan Firstborn regiments are trained in the frozen snow and ash-covered ruins of the planet's ancient cityscapes, on portions of their homeworld no longer habitable or functional, before being shipped out, once each generation, to serve the Imperium, never to return. Unusually, the Firstborn reinforce their regiments, sending new soldiers out to each one, no matter how far away it is, or how difficult providing their reinforcement will prove to be. This ensures that the youngest members of the Firstborn have the experience of hardened veterans to draw upon during battle, and that every Vostroyan Firstborn regiment can trace their existence back to their original musterings, 10,000 Terran years before. With every Vostroyan family, from the highest Tetrarchs to the lowliest menial, required to send their firstborn son to serve the Emperor, familial ties within regiments are not uncommon, and many young Vostroyans have found themselves under the guardianship of distant uncles and older cousins, something that encourages a strong bond of brotherhood. Within each regiment, the officer corps is composed of those of noble birth, while the common soldiery are drawn from the Vostroyan working families that make up the bulk of the world's population. Vostroyan regiments are most commonly inline infantry, and are particularly at home in cold environments and urban areas, as these conditions best match those of their training back on Vostroya. However, the Vostroyan Firstborn armored regiments are not uncommon, turning the Vostroyans' traditional ties with the Adeptus Mechanicus into a highly skilled operation of the Imperial Guard's powerful main battle tanks. Vostroyans believe that the proper way of living are those tried and tested by generations that have gone before. Horror, pain, and death are the just rewards for curiosity, for those that look too deep into the mysteries of the universe are all too likely to find malefic beings looking back at them. For the Vostroyans, ignorance truly is bliss. The Vostroyans also reserve a deep disdain for their Imperial Guard regiments they perceive to be less devoted to the Imperial cause than themselves, although that can sometimes include the great many of their allies on the battlefield. But should the Vostroyans' respect be gained by the individual or a fellow regiment, they are comrades in the face of death and hardship that any servant of the Emperor would be proud to serve beside. And those were 40 facts on the Vostroyan Firstborn. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. It was highly requested by you guys, and I was just absolutely surprised that we haven't created a lore video on the Vostroyan Firstborn. So there you go. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, share it with your friends on Facebook, Twitter, or whatever social media you guys use. I know in some of the episodes of the Greater War, you guys were asking about what would be a good regiment to pair up with a Space Marine in a cold climate, or a Space Marine in an urban fighting climate. The Vostroyan Firstborn are an excellent choice for that. If you do pair them up with a Space Marine chapter, I would love to hear what that chapter is. Hit us up in the comment section below, or hit us up on Facebook. If you guys like what we do, support us on Patreon. A simple $1 a month helps us create more videos for you guys, especially now that YouTube is demonetizing pretty much every single video we post. We have to get a request to get it monetized again every day. That doesn't fail. I don't know if it's because, Warhammer 40K is full of war and grim dark, so the tags are about war and battle and soldiers, and of course YouTube is like, yeah, we don't want that on the channel because of the implications it may bring, but then they watch the video and they say, oh, this is just sci-fi and fantasy, go ahead and do it. But yeah, every single day we're getting demonetized, so help us out on Patreon. A simple $1 will help us out, or share it with your friends, and it really helps us out. With that said, guys, I'll see you guys tomorrow. This was Gershwin with One Mind Syndicate, signing out.